This is part 2, the call to soar free. And I recounted last week of a recollection of a time in the early 80s where some friends and I went up to a little airstrip in northern Denver here, and we signed up for glider plane rides. And they were 2-seat glider planes, which are engineless, and there's a seat from the person who's bought the ride, which in that case was me, and then, thank God, there's a seat for the pilot behind. And then we're connected by a cable to a single-engine plane, a Cessna or a Piper Cub, and that plane takes off and then pulls the glider plane up. And so we had been experiencing that elevation for about, maybe 10 minutes when at one point I hear in the little speaker set, okay, it's time for you to pull that release lever. And as I recounted last week, there was that twinge of a moment where, this is good as is, because the scenery was gorgeous. I thought, I'm complete. But then he asked again, and I did, in fact, pull that lever. And then we got to soar free and experience why they have fledgling pilots have this experience, so that they can really enter into their mastery, where they can really sense the currents, the updrafts, the downdrafts, and really become pilots. And some people love to do it, even accomplished pilots. It's so very pure. And as we completed that experience, I thought, what an incredible metaphor, a powerful transformational metaphor for all of our lives. So powerful, because life supports us in so many ways. It gives us opportunities to be elevated, to be empowered in this life. And there also become many times when we are called to release from those elevating sources in our life, that we might learn how to fly even more powerfully in this life, learn how to be more masterful. These are soulful moments that come to each of us in the various sectors of our lives, where life says, all right, choose something that elevates you, use it well, and then be available to that call to let go, to release that you might deepen, you might awaken new capabilities within yourself, discover more of who you are. Soulful moments. And this support that is given us in so many sectors of our life, in most cases, is meant for a reason or a season, not necessarily forever. And the tendency, though, as we experience this, is to cling to those things that we have experienced that elevate us, that have supported us, and to resist that call that says, yeah, but there's another level of your empowerment, which is to know you can integrate this, you can handle this yourself. And we resist that. And so one of the questions I encourage you to explore was, what am I clinging to? What am I clinging to? And what am I resisting? Where am I resisting life-enhancing changes? This week I found a passage in the Tao that speaks to this. When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. When I let go of what I have, I receive what I need. And so last week, as I brought us into this whole metaphor, we looked at some areas like our roles, the roles we play that are usually important and very good, and yet there's a call to either evolve them or let them go. Whereabout is that for you? Sometimes it's the routes we've chosen, the paths, career paths, other kinds of paths, and they run their course, and we sense we'd like something different, but we cling. And sometimes block the greater dream that wants to emerge, a new chapter that wants to show up in our life. Sometimes it's relationships. Thank God there are some relationships that go the long distance for us, and then there are many relationships that are for a season or a lesson. And sometimes we resist that change. Then we looked at ruts, how it's so important to discover the times we've gotten in a rut and pull the release lever on stagnant living. And finally, we addressed religiosity, how tempting it is to just live at the surface of this thing called religion or faith or spirituality, and just spout ideas rather than going deep. It's not so much about flitting from one path to another. It's all about, can I go deeper in this path that has spoken to me? Challenging myself into a deeper experience of the divine. So that brings us current. And what I want to base today's remarks on about this is that, there are indeed those times that we are elevated by something so beneficial and powerful. And yes, some of those last for a long part of our life and continually are generative. They continue to elevate us. There are those soulmate relationships that we pray to be blessed with, and I am blessed with. There are those soulmate relationships, deep, deep friendships. There are our spiritual path, I believe, is one of these that goes on, and we go deeper with our spiritual practices, the power of spiritual community that I spoke to last week. And then there are our values. And beyond that, there are many things that have elevated us that it's time for us to release from so that we can master them on our own without that assistance. But what I want to focus on today is how it's also possible that we attach ourselves to that which we think is going to make life tolerable, but it actually weakens us. And rather than elevating, it takes us down, sometimes even breaks us. And I want us to be aware that we can get attached to that too, those kinds of things. And it's time to pull the release lever there. And as our acronym is to seize opportunity and release, to soar. And the overall area, the first area I want to look at is the content of our consciousness. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, said the first step in healing is one of honest self-assessment. And how powerful it is to get honest with ourselves and take a look at what have I been allowing to be active in my awareness, my consciousness, my thinking, my energies, my feelings. What's been going on in this? Some of the things I think we could take a look at is, how do I deal with the past? My past. Is my past a rich treasure trove that I cherish and all of its lessons that actually vaults me forward? Or is my past what I call a paralyzing past? One that's a ball and chain. Are you carrying that kind of a relationship with your past? It is possible for you to pull that release lever and not be chained to that. One of the most significant areas to look at in that regard is our sense of resentments and unhealed wounds from the past. Oh, we can stay attached to them. We can think that they're attached to us when in truth we're attached to them. And we attach to them because we thought it justified us, whatever happened to us, what was said to us, what was done, that was in truth not good, and yet we stay attached to that. We stay involved in the victim narratives around it. Now, every one of us is subject to times when we're victimized. Maybe it's a part of life on this planet at this level. And it hurts, and it shouldn't be. And we don't have to wear the identity of victim, because that keeps us stuck. We don't grow from the experience. It keeps taking us down. It poisons us. And so we have to look at those unhealed wounds. Is that something you could pull a release lever on? And just say to yourself, enough. I can't squeeze any more thing out of this. And it actually is, it's distributing toxins to the mind, the emotions, and the body. It's an ineffective way of dealing with a hurt. Here's an effective way. And it's to realize that we can stay attached to the lesser story, which isn't going to get us anywhere. And that's the story of who did what to me and how terrible it was. And it was, no doubt about that. Or we can then detach from that and attach to the larger story, the soul story. Because what I've experienced personally, and I've written about it and told you about it, is that in one of the most excruciating experiences in my life, where I attached myself for a time to bitterness, to hurt, to anger, even hatred, there came a time when I realized that was going to really do harm to me. And that it was up to me to shift my relationship with that experience. And some people helped me awaken to that for sure. And then I attached myself to an exploration. What's the meaning of this in my life? And what's the soul story, the larger story? And I began to realize that that whole experience, I brought that into my life to teach me about the state of my heart center. And it was time for me on my journey to open my heart, to not live in fear with a closed or protected heart, but to open my heart. And when that got accomplished, and I'll never forget the day when I was inducted into the power of the heart, when that happened, I was transformed. I looked back at the original experience and all the pain I'd been holding with it, and I said, oh my God, that's the most blessed thing that could have ever happened to me. And to this day, I give thanks for it. But it took detaching and attaching to a higher possibility. And I'm telling you, in every betrayal or resentment any one of us can have, it has the opportunity. The soul will use it to awaken capacities within us. When we're ready to let go and allow it to happen. Oh, I pray that you will do that you might experience an exquisite freedom. And then the realization that you indeed have transcended that you have realized that nothing anyone ever says or does has the power to diminish you ultimately, finally. That you can reclaim your spiritual selfhood and soar. I think it'd be also good in this whole area of our consciousness to take a look at what I call the inadequacy mantras. You know, in spiritual traditions, the chant is used to evoke certain energies and to integrate those energies. And so we chant certain things. And the interesting thing is that many people misuse this very powerful tool, and they chant their inadequacies over and over and over. They chant, I can't, over and over. They chant, I'm not enough, over and over. I'm not good enough. I'm not attractive enough. I'm not creative enough. I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm too this. I'm too that. I always screw up with money. I can't keep a relationship. And so we chant it and we chant it. And there's a power in the universe that says, as it is, as you declare it to be, so shall it be. And we chant into place our miseries and our blockages and our sabotage. And something within us realizes at our depth of, why am I doing this? There's a higher truth. When am I going to challenge these bad habits of thought? Which is why we teach these classes here, is to retrain how we articulate our creative power and consciousness to uplift us rather than to take us down. And a very important thing about this is that you keep chanting your inadequacies long enough and you try to find something to salve those wounds. And sometimes that's what leads into the addictions and the dependencies. Maybe today, some of you may be saying, it's time to release, time to pull that release lever. And if that's where you are, they've got a great recovery ministry here in this church. And there are many, many resources out there. Pull that release lever. Yeah, do it. And while we're at it, let's inventory any other toxic beliefs that are running rampant in our consciousness that are unworthy of a being of light. You are a luminous light being. But you know, there are times we catch ourselves in harsh judgments. The ego loves to judge so it can feel superior. And so we start judging anything and anyone who's different, forgetting that the universe loves variety. I mean, and has a sense of humor. Look at all of us. I mean, it could create all of us, this menagerie of beautiful beings. And so we start judging. And then it can devolve into our prejudices and even bigotry. Honest self-assessment, Dr. Holmes says, is the doorway to healing. To decide, maybe I could release that judgment and just let them be. Bless them. Everybody out there is a child of God. Even the ones you judge. They're a child of God, no less valuable than you or me. And so we catch ourselves in these kinds of things. We pull the release valve, and then we're free. And all of this, the name of the game is to soar and to discover that we don't need those old crutches, which aren't doing us a lick of good at all. And then something happens to our overall self-esteem. And we begin to believe in ourselves. We begin to experience ourselves living a quality life from within out. And then we begin to realize nothing's impossible when we're living in that way. Nothing. A while back, I want to refresh a story that I shared about a courageous lady named Suzanne Crowder, who at 28 found herself homeless. and 7 months pregnant. She had a terrible, terrible upbringing. An alcoholic mother, abuse of every kind, told thousands of times that she was worthless. She found herself having her very first birthday party around a burning trash barrel with some of her homeless friends who had pitched in their food stamps to buy her a little cake and had scraped together about $5 for her to get a meal to feed her and that life in her tummy. And she went and she slept for a while where she would normally hang out, what she called her squat. And then she was cold and she went dumpster diving trying to find some food, but then wandered into a public library, ambled into the inspiration section, pulled a book, any book. It was Chicken Soup for the Soul. And she opened to the middle of it, and there was a story she read called Puppies for Sale about how a boy wanted a puppy. And this boy was crippled in one leg and wore a big, heavy brace. And he went into the store and he looked at this litter of puppies, and he said to the pet store owner, "I want that one." And the pet store owner said, "You don't want that one. That's the run of the litter, and there's something wrong with its leg. It's lame. You don't want that one." And he said, "Yeah, that's the one I want." And he said, "Well, I'll tell you what, here, I'll give it to you because it's worthless." And he got really angry, that little boy, and he pulled up his pant leg and showed his brace and showed his leg. And he says, "He's not worthless, nor am I. And he needs somebody who's going to understand him." He bought the dog. And she read that. And then here's what happened within her. She said, "My chest feels heavy and my breathing is quick. Maybe I'm valuable too," is the thought that circles my head and heart, enveloping me in comfort. I'm suddenly at peace with myself. I'm no longer alone. I'm not sure who's with me, but I'm surrounded by compassion. I'm valuable too. I'm no longer damaged goods. With help, I can have a life. And she went on to have a life. She got a lot of therapy, did a lot of spiritual work, did some life skills training, had her son who did well in sports and well in school and has a great life. And today she's an author, a trainer, CEO of Chicken Soup Kitchens that's dedicated to feeding the hungry. And she said that one little story at the library initiated change and love inside of me. It launched a miracle. She pulled the release lever on her whole concept, her whole awareness of herself. And we can do that. Let's take out the garbage, take out the trash. Let's pull the release lever and let the miracle, the love that we are, have its wings to fly. Another area I wanted to touch on before concluding this is the tendency to get committed to a life of safety that becomes actually a deadened life. And it really is this whole sense that I got to put up big walls and no adventuring out, no risking anymore in my life. Maybe I risk and it didn't turn out, and now I'm not going to do that anymore, or whatever the case. Or maybe where I am in this station of life, that's all over. And we get into these ruts of deadened living. I'm pretty sure that none of you, as you were standing at the threshold of this lifetime, decided that your entire overarching purpose was to make it safely to the other end in death. I'm pretty sure you had something more in mind and heart for this life. How about pulling that release lever and spreading your wings a little bit? Try some new things. Experience, explore, discover. That's why we're here. Because this life, really it's over in the blinking of an eye. Sometimes in the middle of it seems like it'll never be over, but boy, it's over so quickly, especially those of us who keep walking down the path. And that which brings me to the final thing I want to deal with, and that is the great transition. When we are guided, when it's optimal for every soul, we are guided to pull the release lever and let this body go. And that's as sacred as any of the other times that the Spirit says, okay, there's a greater experience. Pull the release lever. pull the release lever. And of course, many of us, if not all of us, have had the experience of others for whom it was optimal, and they moved on in that greater dimension, and it hurts. We grieve the loss of a loved one, loss of a pet, loss of certain activities or stages in our life. We grieve. And we have the opportunity to understand that our grieving is so deep because our loving was so full. That we grieve in this life because we love. If we didn't love, if we didn't care, we wouldn't grieve, but we do. And the more we get in touch with this grief is a facet on the gem of love, then we can even add another facet, and that is gratitude. Along with the sadness of release, we feel grateful that we were able to love like that we were brought together with that kind of love. And we give thanks, not that it ended, but that it happened. And somehow, even in that, we're taking onward and upward. And there's going to come that time for you and me when the pilot says, okay, you're good. Good job. Pull that release lever. And you know, when that happened for me in the glider, I was scared about it, but we don't have to be scared. Because here's the deal. As we glided for about an hour, the pilot behind me coached me in how to circle around and make an approach toward home base, toward the landing strip. And then at one point, he said, okay, good job. I've got it from here. And thank God he landed that plane. He landed, thank God he landed that plane. And I think that the parallel for us is so striking. You know, when we pull that release lever and we glide free from the body, the master pilot takes over and ushers us into a greater, grander experience of its power and its love. So we don't have to fear this landing. We just have to turn over the controls. And up until that time, we get to live fully and enjoy the adventure that is ours to have, knowing that at the right time, that principle, that power is going to take us onward and upward into our greater yet to be. Franz Kafka, he was a European novelist of the 20th century. A story was written about Kafka based on the memories of a woman who lived with him in Berlin just before his death. And in this story, Kafka takes a walk in the park where he meets a tearful little girl who just lost her favorite doll. Her favorite doll. And he tries and fails to help find the doll. Then he tells the girl that the doll must have taken a trip. And luckily, Kafka, is a doll postman and would send word from the doll to the little girl. Well, the next day, he brings the girl a letter, which he'd composed the night before. And in the letter, the doll says to the girl, "Don't be sad. I've gone on a trip to see the world. I will write you of my adventures." And so after that, Kafka gives the girl many such letters. Some saying the doll is going to school, doing wonderful things, meeting exciting new people. And her new life prevents her from returning. But she loves the girl and always will. And at their final meeting, Kafka gives the girl a doll with an attached letter. He knows that this doll looks different from the lost one. So the letter says, "My travels have changed me." The girl cherishes the gift for the rest of her life. And many decades later, she finds another letter stuffed into an overlooked cranny in the substitute doll. This letter says, "Everything that you love you will eventually lose. But in the end, love will return in a different form. Isn't that life's message to us all? So as we ponder the gifts of life to lift us, as we honestly assess the things we attach to that aren't lifting us, and we gallantly hear the call in our hearts to pull that release lever, may that just allow us to soar. And as you prepare to do that, wherever you are called in your precious, wonderful life, may these 3 R's help you. First of all, reflect. Reflect on the evolutionary energy that's at the heart of life, always wanting to blossom life, always wanting to take life to its, every aspect of life to its greater yet to be, and its call within you to keep becoming. Keep becoming. And remember the master pilot that's right behind you all the time to help in this. Remember that master pilot that has endowed you with spiritual life and the seeds of greatness. That master pilot that will guide you, change you and transform you and make sure you're blessed and a blessing in this life. And then resolve. Resolve to love yourself and live your life to its absolute fullest with great heart and a steadfast faith, with a radical reliance on God. Reflect, remember, resolve, and then seize opportunity and release. Soar free. Let's have a prayer. Breathing in the breath of life. May we transcend the stories about ourselves, all the past stuff, the hurts we gain along the way. May we transcend immature and obsolete ways of thinking, that we might re-enchant our lives, that we might pull the release lever on that which does not belong to a radiant child of God, and soar free, find our wings. There's an old hymn that says that he will raise you up on eagle's wings, bear you on the breath of dawn, make you to shine like the sun, and hold you in the palm of his hand. In those times when we soar and sail into what seems like the unknown, may we sense that master pilot holding us in the palm of its hands, ever whispering to us of the spiritual powers within us, the capacities, the qualities, the good, the light. Trusting that. So sense this love that holds you right now. Sense its gentle invitation in the various areas that are right and ripe for you to pull the release lever. And you're not sailing into nothingness. You're sailing into the ocean of life, learning how to be so adept and powerful to soar. And so I affirm that this all-embracing love that has seated us with its integrity, beauty, joy, and power guides us ever onward into our greater yet to be, into that ultimate release as well. For it is the joy of life that we shall become endlessly. Endlessly. So I give thanks for this freeing truth I bless the courageous, adventurous, magnificent light and life you are, everyone is. As we embrace that with our whole heart, the way is shown. And it's good, very good. So I accept the healings, the empowerments, the freedom of mind, body, and emotions for all of us here, of situations. Something about this consciousness ripples out and begins to balance, harmonize, and bless everything going on, allowing us to retain our creative power in this life. And as we accept this, and revel in this, the adventure, may we also envision and accept peace in the hearts of humankind, radiating around this planet, connecting all peoples, and bringing forth the greater good that we deserve. For this blessed truth within us, may we give thanks, and let it be and become. And so it is. Amen.